All right, it's 10:41 a.m. here in Ormond Beach, Florida, and I think it's 6:41 a.m. in Unga, Alaska, in the East Aleutian Islands borough, or whatever it's called. That's an abandoned mining town, and I bring it up because, you know, I like to say when I don't get this done right at the time of sunrise, which is probably about 6:35 a.m., that it's sunrise somewhere. But when I do it this time of day, it's a little bit of a challenge to find somewhere that is inhabited, or at least in this case was formerly inhabited, that the sun is actually rising in. You know, east coast of the United States, like every minute there are probably hundreds of places it's rising, but this, you know, at that particular longitude, not many places to choose from. So I actually made sure I started at 10:41 a.m. just so I could say Unga, Alaska, the sun is rising. By the way, no one lives there, it's abandoned, and I put a link in there so you can have more information if you're curious enough about Unga, Alaska, which gotta love the name. I assume it's probably an Aleutian Eskimo name. But I actually prepared for this one a little bit more than usual, a little bit more of a personal issue because it involves Harvard, where I went undergrad. I mention Harvard sometimes not because I'm saying, hey, I'm better than you because I went to Harvard, you didn't. It's just I'm a little more wary and less impressed by the whole Ivy League thing, and I think that is of value to you because I went there. I know what it's like. Yeah, I'm not as impressed by it. And for me, you know, I do not have what it takes to do the whole deep state, big law firm, investment bank, big higher education thing. I had to go a different path. I learned that the hard way for quite a few years coming out of college. When I tried to make it work, it just isn't me. It isn't who I am. Look, if it were who I am, I wouldn't be doing these kinds of Facebook Live things. I wouldn't be so committed to doing real conveying of information I find useful, which is not the mentality at these schools. If you take the real meaning of conservative, reactionary, that's really about as conservative and reactionary as you get, even if the ideology is totally messed up. That is not someone coming to arrest me for saying that, by the way. Just I'm outside here behind a shopping center in Florida. A couple points I do want to make about how I'm doing this. Look, I try to do a sunrise, midday, sunset report, preferably at the exact times every day. You know, I try to give you the actual sun. I try to give you the actual sunrise. Sunset's a little bit more of a challenge because I can't just go to the ocean and do it when I'm on the east coast of Florida. But, you know, have some flexibility. I don't think anyone's really depending on me for that. But I do try to provide you with something that's useful that you might not have thought about. Most of the time, often when I'm reading things, I'm not trying to pass it off as original thought. And that's why I have a big problem with a lot of people who do videos. They pass off things as if, I like to use this expression, they're descending from the heavens to share their wisdom. Tommy Lauren, or as I call her now, Tawdry Lauren, because of various things there. You know, you're passing off things as if you came up with them. You're not giving credit. I often give credit where credit's due. I think you can probably tell from my eye contact, not today because I'm wearing sunglasses, just to mix it up a little bit, or my body language and the tone of voice, what is original from me and what is not. But I just try to, above everything else, convey you useful stuff, be a sort of modern day conduit, or I like the term librarian, just directing you to stuff that's more useful to me. If you don't watch me because you're busy reading marketticker.org, or you're reading from Ace of Spades, or if you're reading from Zero Hedge, those are all good alternative sources. Power to you, you know, that's good. But I need to sort of motivate you to do that, and I try to be entertaining where I can. And obviously my main focus right now is the new sort of radio show I'm doing, which is Backlash on Shark Nation Radio. So those are preliminaries. I also want to give you some thoughts I have about the story. We're talking about Harvard's blacks only graduation ceremony. There are a few notes. I'm going to just go through them. I don't pretend to have it memorized. I have a second iPhone right here that I read from. I can disguise it a little bit better when I'm wearing sunglasses. And I'm just going to go through this. I start with the topic, you know, how nice. Harvard goes, black only commencements matter. And don't you say anything about it, you racists. I always like to use the term racist with 9 A's. That's my way of showing I'm being sarcastic, mocking the whole racism, Uber alles, the racism industry, all that. And I like the term. I came up with this one on myself. I will give myself credit here. I'm sure someone came up with it. I wrote polished disingenuousness. Is it perhaps time to start using the term polished disingenuousness to apply to your Harvard, Ivy League, wannabe Ivy League superiors? There is a whole wannabe Ivy League thing out there. We won't get into that. And put in comments here. I will respond to them. I can only see the first 2 lines of them, so don't make them too long and think I'm going to respond. But I will try to make this interactive. I'm going to be here for a while. I put in a lot of time preparing. I am well rested, and I'm not going to respond to every comment here, only the really good ones. I'm well rested because I actually slept past till practically 7 a.m., which is highly unusual for me today, which means I had to do other things at the start of the day. I didn't have time to do the Sunrise Report at 6:30, but I'm energized. I've had 2 coffees. I'm going to be here for a while unless I have to go to the bathroom for those 2 coffees. I gave you the background, the Gateway Pundit version of the story, which is where it originally came to mind, where I originally found out about it. Separate but equal, black Harvard students to hold blacks-only commencement ceremony. That's, I think, the well-written, accurate piece. Thank you, Jim Hoft, for the great work you do at the Gateway Pundit. Then, what is that based off? It was a piece in the Boston Globe, and very virtual signaling, ridiculous so-called reporting. The Gateway Pundit put it as the most leftist way possible. And I even included a Twitter page to the author of the story, inevitably, as far as I can tell, a secular Jew, which means very liberal, probably doesn't go to synagogue too much. You need me? Okay, sorry, I thought someone needed me. And pretty much what I expected is as I wrote it. And I noticed that as of 9:50 a.m. today, 17 hours after we tweeted this, from a major newspaper, there has not been 1 retweet or 1 like on his Twitter page. And he has like 6,000 followers. Amazing. And I like this comment from Mel Listener, or at least the beginning of it. He likes that I said polished disingenuousness, describing our educated elitist, reminds me of a saying from years ago in which I believe was called a comic strip. Those who have their nose in the air miss a lot of, and it cuts off there. So, I don't know, read it on the page if you want to see more. I put in, as I mentioned, a link to ungaalaska.com. That's kind of cool. I haven't even had a chance to look at it. I put in a link to my big priority right now, which is Shark Nation Radio Backlash. But again, you're getting more of me here. I do mostly interviews on that show. I think they're excellent, and I think the production team is particularly excellent, and they probably add more than I do. They do the hard work, and then I just talk to people on the air. So all that you need there is there. So a few notes I want to make before I get into the stories and the excellent comments that I've put together on the stories, both from people on my Facebook page, on my Rush Limbaugh unofficial fan group Facebook page, and then the comments to the Gateway Pundit page. I just try to get you the best of them. And I'm adding value. That's my thing, adding value. Bringing you stories you don't know, going through the comments, finding the best ones, sometimes even giving my own input. More often, just reading good stories that are worth your attention. Okay, so just notes I made to myself in no particular order. I went to Harvard undergrad, as I mentioned. No, I'm not the typical Harvard alum. I might have tried to be. It became clear I did not fit in with the mindset, with all that. And in the last 10, 15 years, I became, I identified myself more as a Judaism observing Jew. I mean, I had to learn the ropes of that a little bit, but I certainly fit more in that environment than in the Ivy League snobbery, where I think there's a lot of insecurity going on there. I think people pretend they fit in when they don't really. I don't have any questions about whether I fit in when I'm among my people, which I identify as Jews, specifically more Judaism observing Jews. Just want to be clear about that. I made a note to myself that so much of the Ivy League and the mentality there is paying what I call ostentatious homage to diversity while being afraid to note that there is anything whatsoever incongruous about the ridiculousness of paying ostentatious homage to diversity, and I'm using that phrase twice on purpose, paying ostentatious homage to diversity while seeing nothing wrong with a blacks-only commencement ceremony. So they say, no, I don't have a problem with it. Please don't ask me. Please don't. I don't want to say anything racist. Don't ask me about it. Just don't make waves. Don't make waves. Yeah, diversity is very important. There's a total contradiction there that is among so many Ivy League students. And again, with the disingenuousness thing, I'm trying to sort of talk from notes. I'm not perfect at it. I'm not reading you something here, but I have these notes. I'm trying to go through it. And I think the whole polished disingenuousness thing is great preparation for Harvard students, again, other Ivy League students, other wannabe Ivy League students, for the disingenuousness that will be so much a part of their lives. Maybe they dream of being the next Sheryl Sandberg. Ugh. Sheryl Sandberg, I think she was the Harvard class of 1991. Maybe she graduated early. Maybe they want to be the next Sally Yates, sticking up for the leftists, the Democrat Party, and sticking it to Ted Cruz. That's a very current reference. I don't think Sally Yates actually went to Harvard. I'm just using her as a very 24-hour news cycle perfect example. You know, it's perfect if you work at an investment bank. You know what banksters are like. You know it. I've seen it. I've seen people evolve who were friends of mine once, whether it's a hedge fund or in academia. You know how much BS you have to spew to go in academia. And it's supposedly a quest for truth at a big university. I don't need to go into that much. I also wrote, you could be out of virtue signaling, as many Ivy Leaguers go into, a virtue signaling big law firm, a big corporate law firm, like Hillary Clinton. You don't hear about how she was a corporate lawyer for 10 years. An okay one, you know, nothing special. She was just an okay corporate lawyer. You don't hear much about that, of course. You didn't hear much about that. Who hears about Hillary much anyway? But, you know, I know about these law firms, and they spend so many pro bono hours. They're paid very well by their clients, but then they spend so many pro bono hours toward things that are basically left of center. And there's a lot of immigration law pro bono work. And that often means bringing in Muslims who will not live in their neighborhoods, and whose kids will not go to school with their kids, but they like to do the pro bono work. Why can't I say it right? Pro bono work for them. And they like to, of course, support the fight against so-called police brutality. Basically, whatever is consistent with what I call the Anti-Christian Litigation Unit, aka the ACLU. There was a friend of mine who I didn't even know in college, whom I've gotten to know in recent years, named Lee Cheng. I think he's going to come on Backlash. My producer is trying to work that out right now. He's been great on this issue, actually, as a top lawyer, and he's been a top corporate counsel, really achieved much. Chinese American, again, didn't even know him in college, but he has done a lot of work on how the whole push for diversity and leftism in universities actually discriminates against his fellow Asian Americans. And I hope to have him on the show. I think that's being finalized right now. I don't know. I'm here right now, so the producer knows that better. Hopefully he will be on. And he wrote a great comment about how what really goes on with the Harvard University, with so many top schools, you know, the students are probably a little smarter, certainly more achieved in high school. But what happens is they work so hard in high school, and then they get sent to what are often centers of indoctrination. Yeah, there's a lot more to it than indoctrination. I forget how he put it. It was very eloquent, but he put it very well, that there's so much indoctrination going on, and you sort of forget about what goes on there once you get in. I think that was true at my case, but realistically, when I went to Harvard, it wasn't that bad. It just wasn't that bad. And I'm not sure it's that bad right now. It's just examples that are easy for the press to write about. And it wasn't that bad for me at Columbia Law School and Business School, too. But I think, again, with the polished disingenuousness thing, you know, they know it's wrong, but like a lot of things, why not just go along with it? It's not that big a deal. It's not going to matter if you major in economics, if you get your pre-med courses done, you're on to big things. You suck it up. You play the game. You get paid. That's the term. I like that term. Getting paid one way or another. But again, that doesn't work for me. I'm not good at brown-nosing, playing the game, or really just pursuing things where the passion on my end is not there. I'm sort of an all-or-nothing person when it comes to passion. You can probably tell that by now. And truth be told, you know, even though I didn't have what it takes attitude-wise to make it with the whole deep state thing. Even the Harvard, bringing that up, like that I'm so proud of my Ivy League background, it stopped for me on the afternoon of October 31st, 2000, because, you know, people can get admitted even to Harvard with some questionable ways. Legacy, athletics, race. You know, I happened to be a non-athlete. I was pretty good at tennis in high school, whose parents did not go to Harvard. They went to Penn. It benefited my brother and sister who went to Penn, and who, you know, obviously white Jewish is not particularly helpful if you're being admitted. But on October 31st, 2000, I won on Jeopardy. That was the recording date. It aired in January. And, like, who cares about where you went into school if you proved yourself that way, where there's no question you have to be maybe not smart, but know a lot of trivia, and at least know a lot and be quick with a buzzer. So, you know, it really stopped mattering to me. I had very little to prove after that point in terms of tangible things. Another thing I have to mention, and I still haven't even gotten into this story, but maybe I haven't lost you yet. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I do not really even blame the black students for wanting to do things separately. Having their own graduation, how fun is that? Really, I don't know. They get their kente cloth. But again, I spend most of my time with observant Jews, especially in my social relationships. Most of my relationships with non-observant Jews, the people that I actually see, are from people from high school or college or the years after that. I'm not, most of the new relationships I make that are at least minimally social are with my people. So it would be hypocritical of me to say that, well, you know, we don't prefer being among our own. No, I think there is a value to it, and I think it certainly is a benefit to a lot of the black students to be among their own who they feel most comfortable from and maybe learn more. It's an environment. I see the superior learning at yeshivas, which are Jewish institutions of higher education, and there is a benefit to being among your own. You feel a certain comfort, and you know, you can focus on the learning, I suppose. I didn't go through that myself, and you know, let's keep in mind, by the way, also Harvard started as, I forget which Protestant denomination. I should know that. I guess Puritan, maybe. You know, it was just a religious training school at some point. Yeah. Doug Ernest has a comment, and I just want to, even if it interrupts, use the comments that I think are worthwhile. He mentions, it seems like most pro bono work consists of politically correct cases they know they can't lose. I don't know, maybe. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Helping a mom get her children back from their father, seriously? I'll be impressed when, and it cuts off there. I don't know. I just want to make sure the comments keep coming. So to do that, I have to talk about them as they come in. And of course, one comment is, knowing how racist the views of a lot of liberals are who wouldn't say so, and I think even more so among liberals, I can't kind of help but kind of flippantly make the observation that many students would love to see as many liberal students, I'm talking about, blacks-only events, preferably a little off-campus as possible, just so they wouldn't come to the other events. And I really think that is the liberal mindset. Okay, let me say one tweet from Slevel, then I'm going to get into the actual article. A guy named Slevel tweeted back to me, and he wrote, "What? Why is it always okay for any group other than one color on the spectrum to segregate themselves and celebrate their own alienation?" That one color on the spectrum that he's referring to clearly is white people. Now, I mentioned there are some real gems in the original, almost pep rally-ish article in the Boston Globe by Michael Levinson. And I, again, provided the link. Exactly the kind of person who embarrasses us Judaism-observing Jews a lot of the time. You know, just looks like the typical secular Jewish liberal. I hate to say it, but, like, and even seeing some of his other tweets, clearly that. Unless I'm really mistaken. Here are some passages, and these are funny, and I'm going to use the whiny, nasally, I have no idea what this guy actually talks like, voice that I associate with that type. What I expect Michael Levinson talks like. And this is what he wrote. 2 days before Courtney Woods dresses in a cap and gown for Harvard's traditional commencement, she will don a stole made of African kente cloth and address the crowd at a somewhat different event. A graduation ceremony for black students. Mike Gorga, by the way, who is conservative, it would not be the liberal who I am talking about before. I like his stuff, and I want to just mention his comment right here. He says, "I really have no desire to be separated from anyone unless they desire hurting me." Okay, fair enough. I'm just saying, I was talking about the preference for being among one's own, and that's certainly the way I, in reality, lead my life at this point. Okay, going on to what Mr. Levinson wrote, and I'll go back to his voice. And here's another passage. "Designed to celebrate their unique struggles and achievements at an elite institution that has been grappling with its historic ties to slavery." Another passage. This is a quote. I don't know how to quote her, because this is a quote. "I can only imagine how special I will feel when I walk across that stage and be able to honor my identity and my struggle at Harvard," said Woods, who is completing a master's degree at the Graduate School of Education. "I know this is exactly what students like me need to be inspired as we leave this place as emerging global leaders." Let me throw a flag on that one. Global leaders? What? And I have to point out, not all Harvard degrees are the same. An undergraduate degree is worth more, as is a law school or medical school or business school degree, is worth more than one from the Graduate School of Education. No offense, it's true. And for that matter, more than one from the Kennedy School of Government. We'll get to more about that later. And then, in all earnestness, Levinson writes, "The ceremony for black students was created during a period of heightened activism related to racism on college campuses and in the country at large." He writes this in all seriousness. "From the Black Lives Matter movement to the increased focus on microaggressions. passing comments that seem to trivialize or marginalize the experience of minorities. He also writes, at Harvard, the campus has also undergone a season of soul searching. Last year, Drew Faust, by the way, Drew Faust is a woman, and what does that tell you? I mean, something about the name Drew on a woman, I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Last year, Drew Faust, university president, and oh, I love this guy. He says this with complete seriousness. Representative John Lewis, no quotations or anything coming up. This is just written as fact. Representative John Lewis, a Georgia Democrat who is a civil rights icon, not who many see as a civil rights icon, not anything in quotes, who is a civil rights icon, unveiled a plaque commemorating 4 slaves who had been owned by Harvard presidents. Talk about virtue signaling. The university also agreed to redesign the Harvard Law School shield, which was modeled on the family crest of an 18th century slaveholder. But, of course, that is not a slaveholder who was one of Barack Obama's direct ancestors, because they were certainly slaveholders. Comment from D.H. Parsons. So the blacks are now bringing us back to segregation, after the whites fought so hard to integrate them. And the whites are the bad guys. The world is upside down. America is falling. I don't disagree, though. Causes of the Civil War is another matter. I don't think it was only about slavery. That's my view. It certainly was to some extent about it, but not all, and certainly not the overwhelming majority. The overwhelming majority of Confederate soldiers did not own slaves. I just want to point that out. And the overwhelming majority of cotton picked, or at least people who picked cotton, or at least places where cotton was picked, did not employ slaves. I don't know in terms of the mass quantity of cotton, because the big plantations were more likely to actually have a lot of slaves. So in aggregate, maybe it was kind of equal, because, you know, it was the big places that needed a lot of slaves. I don't know. We're not going into that. John Lewis, I have to say, by the way, boycotted Netanyahu. I got a problem with that. He wouldn't be there when Netanyahu spoke to Congress, what, a year ago, or was it 2 years ago now? And he always has that perpetually aggrieved look on his face. Like, you know, he's so pained about he got pushed, or, you know, he had an injury he was fined for the next day when he was struggling for civil rights 50 years ago. And I gotta ask, because it's true of a lot of the civil rights people, how many white women did the whole civil rights thing get for John Lewis? Because we know it was true for Martin Luther King. Oh, we're not supposed to talk about that. And there was a lot of that went on there. Don't kid yourself. Someone else writes, this isn't, oh, no. I wrote, this is interesting. Nice editing. Because Levinson provides no explanation here. He writes at one point, in 2015, 5% of the 7,595 degrees that Harvard awarded went to black students. So that's 5% in 2015. And he also writes, black students make up just under 14% of the students accepted into Harvard's undergraduate class of 2020. So, but he doesn't explain what the population percentages were. I mean, there's a big inconsistency between 5% and 14%. Of course, blacks are 13% of the population, so why, it's without, so even if it's totally equal, just under 14% would be pretty consistent with the number of the population, right? But 5% of the degrees, 14% undergrad. I mean, I think he includes graduate schools in one and not in the other, and maybe the population is just a lot lower at the graduate schools. I don't know. I just don't know. I would not think there's any reason the number of blacks in the graduate school would be any lower than undergrads, but he doesn't explain it. That's poor writing. That's all I want to say with that. He also has this. The primary reason we wanted to do this is we really wanted to come together to celebrate Harvard black excellence and brilliance, said Huggins, who was graduating from the Kennedy School. Oh, I got the voices wrong there, backwards. This is really an opportunity for students to build fellowship and build a community. Shouldn't the community have been built well before graduation? That's my comment. Okay, then Levinson writes, every graduate at the event will receive a stole made of kente cloth as a symbol of their African heritage. Doesn't a stole have to be fur? I may be having my definition wrong there. And while there will be tributes to the students' successes, some of the speakers also plan to bluntly confront the challenges facing the black community, said Jillian Simons, a law school student who is incoming president of the Harvard Black Graduate Student Alliance. Okay, being a law student is a little more impressive than being at the Graduate School of Education, just being blunt. Man, someone's being as loud as I am in this parking lot. I don't think she's doing a live stream, though. I think she's having a fight with someone. Going on. I think this is the last quote I have from that horrible Boston Globe piece. Students of all racial and ethnic backgrounds may attend. Oh, how nice. He said, And the black students taking part in the ceremony also plan to attend the university's official commencement on May 25th in Harvard Yard. So it's really not a separate but equal thing. It's a separate in addition thing. As I put it, wanting their cake and eating it too. So, you know, you get to be part of the whole, and you get to have your, I don't know if elite's the right word, your separate keeping it real event, graduation. So it just gives more things to go to for your relatives coming in. But I don't blame them, really. And by the way, I'm wondering who the speaker is at the black-only graduation. Is it Trayvon Martin's mom, civil rights icon John Lewis, Sean King, Rachel Dolezal, the teenager who just turned himself into the police in North Fort Lauderdale, Pompano Beach area for when the older white woman complained about the noise there. She got body slammed and thrown into the pool, and the guy had to just turn himself into police and said, "I'm owning up to it," after he was caught. He said that. So maybe he'd be a good speaker. Why not? He's down with the struggle. And by the way, I can't help but wonder, should Trayvon Martin get an honorary degree like he did in aviation engineering, or as was just announced? He's going to get that from some Florida school, some Miami University, an institution of higher education that no one's ever heard of. Why not get one from Harvard, right? I think it's kind of racist that he doesn't. Okay, now we've gotten to the point where I can give you the coverage of this from the Gateway Pundit. This is how an article, in my opinion at least, should be written about this. It's called Separate But Equal. Black Harvard students to hold blacks only commencement ceremony. This is by someone named Carter. By the way, how about a last name there, Jim? I love your work, but your writers should have their last names on it. I mean, maybe he wants to protect himself. It's a euphemism because he's afraid of the consequences of writing something like this. He wrote it well, but it's annoying when someone just uses their first name. At least give a last name that's made up or something. So Carter, who's Carter? Especially Carter on a conservative site. Why are you going to use that as a first name and make that the only name? You make me think of Jimmy, and from those of us who like the Phillies, we think of Joe Carter, who's black, by the way, but he also hit the game-winning home run against the Phillies in the '93 World Series. So two reasons not to like the name Carter for us conservative fans of the Philadelphia Phillies. Here's what he writes. Black race-baiting Harvard students have organized an event called Black Commencement 2017, which is the first university-wide ceremony for black students only to walk in. And the comments on this are good. We're going to get to them soon. Unbelievably exclusionary and racist, the black students of Harvard apparently are so marginalized and hated that they need to create a special safe space wherein they can, quote, celebrate their unique struggles and achievements. It's not like they're students at one of the most exclusive universities in the world or anything. Then he continues. This type of event is disgusting and arrogant, but this isn't new and shouldn't be shocking to anyone. Quote, ethnic minority groups, end quote, love to tell everyone just how different they are when it suits their needs, and they resort to holding exclusive events. But when they are excluded from something, they feel the need to riot, loot, and vandalize to show just how much they deserve to be included, all under the guise of groups like Black Lives Matter. Well, I'm not sure that's what they were really rioting about. Usually it's about the police or something. And these students at Harvard probably are not the type who riot. I'm just saying. Okay, but he goes on. The black community was rightfully angry when we lived in a country where things were separate but equal. But in today's society, everything must be separated for them to celebrate their unique struggles. Again, these are sweeping generalizations to some extent, but I like the writing here. And the white students have to watch and be made aware of black excellence. Well, it's optional at the event, let's be fair. The Boston Globe reported on this story in the most leftist way possible. The following is a quote from a student named Courtney Woods, who is going to participate in the event. I can only imagine how special I will feel when I walk across that stage and be able to honor my identity and my struggle at Harvard, said Woods, who was completing a master's degree in the Graduate School of Education. I know this is exactly what students like me need to be inspired as we leave this place as emerging global leaders. Now, we already talked about the global leaders thing in the context of the Graduate School of Education. It goes on, the Gateway Pundit article. The primary reason we wanted to do this is we really wanted to come together to celebrate Harvard black excellence and brilliance, said Huggins, who was graduating from the Kennedy School. Again, not at the same level of being an undergraduate, going to the law school, going to the engineering school. Not that Harvard's is necessarily the best engineering school. MIT down the street might be better, or going to the med school or the business school. Not quite as elite. This is really an opportunity for students to build fellowship and build a community. Then Carter writes, so special. The event can be attended by students of other races, but only black students are allowed to participate. This is an embarrassing moment for a once great institution. Now, the comments section. These are always fun. Okay, Marcy Sweetnish just writes, racist bigotry. David Moser writes, thanks Obama. This is the only thing you accomplished in your 8 years. Oh, giving Iran nukes, don't forget about that. I would not hire a Harvard graduate no matter their color. What about me, man? Because I already have enough problems without bringing on someone that thinks we owe them everything and that their color is more important than their character. Jesse Patterson writes, yeah, they won't need Whitey till it's time to find a job. Well, of course, Harvard is an institution that was created and built by whites, but okay. Shadrick Shodney writes, irony. Gary Bell. In my youth, they were mad because they were segregated. Now they're going back to it for the dumbest reasons. Again, they're still taking advantage of all the integrated stuff, so it's not really segregated. It's just additional. Whipped cream on top, whatever. Diane Yap, who I'm not friends with, but is friends with Lee Cheng. That's cool. Means Harvard can have a whites-only ceremony too, right? And then Doug Ernest, who I saw was watching this before, writes, yes, but unlike the blacks-only ceremony, the white ceremony will be attended by racists. Well, yeah, of course. Then Diane Yap writes to that, needing a special ceremony to celebrate only black excellence sounds pretty racist to me. What if there were a ceremony to celebrate only white excellence that other races couldn't walk in? Because the white struggle of constantly being told to check your privilege, I mean, it's taxing. Probably happens daily at a place like Harvard. The black thing is just as racist as a whites-only ceremony. Then Jay McDonald writes, I say bring back the 50s. They'll get their way with no problem. So let's go back to all white graduations. Oh, wait, that would be racism. Shock, shock. Obama's legacy continues. Effing idiots. Sandra Crew writes, they make me sick. They are and always have been more racist than others. I don't disagree. Mike Gorga writes, this is going to get much worse because liberals can never say no to minorities they identify as victims. Malcolm Gentry writes, Harvard people remind me of the Bob Dylan line. Little boy lost, he takes himself so seriously. By the way, do I do that? I don't know. Do I take myself that seriously? It really probably depends on time of day, how much sleep I got, whether I exercised recently. Pete Crafts writes, the real racists. Shadrick Shani writes, should their degrees read remedial degree in African American studies? Bill Mayorga Egan writes, keep it up, and one of these days the back of the bus will be full again by their choice. I don't really think that's what's going to happen. I don't think that's the way the world is headed right now. Look at the elections in France. Deborah Krieger. Now this is a nice long one. Focus on the people who are inclusive. Very positive. 2, remember there was a war fought to stop slavery. We can disagree on that. Maybe partially to stop slavery, I will go with. It was mostly in the life experiences, admissions, and corrections in this world. 4, I believe in reincarnation. We are all souls incarnating in different bodies in different time periods for character growth, different cultures, races, religions, etc., to see things from different perspectives. So from this perspective, all lives matter. Well ended there. Oh, the whole thing was well written there, Deborah. And then I like this long one from Ellen Ziroff, whom I know, I've met personally, and I believe, I may be wrong, she was in my mom's class at Penn, and the political correctness had not hit the Ivy League universities to that anywhere near that extent at that point. She writes, shining a spotlight on color versus non-color among students, faculty, and other categories of professions is not a new strategy. It has been going on for 15 to 20 years. There was no embarrassment on the part of the organizers when the first Librarians of Color conference was announced and advertised. Maybe Ellen's a librarian? I don't know. The conference continues right up to today. All the ethnic committees in the umbrella ethnic group Roundtable of the American Library Association were invited to participate in this conference except you can guess. Do you know yet? Did you register your guess? Except the Jewish Information Committee. I was chair. We Jewish librarians were librarians and we were ethnic, but were perceived and deemed outside their definition of librarians of color. I'm curious, were the gays included? Is there a gay librarians association? I don't know. We even had on our committee one African American Jewish librarian, but that didn't cut it. Yes, the notion of a segregated graduation is anachronistic and obscene. It is obvious to any sentient person that there would have been a loud cry of outrage had anyone organized a white librarians conference. The foolishness, racism, and arrogance of the double standard defies description. Now, you waited long enough. The best of the comments at the Gateway Pundit version of this story. I like a lot of these. I have some sad news for Woods. Whether it's at Harvard or Flux Capacitor U, a master in education doesn't mark anyone as an emerging global leader. As I alluded to before, and he actually phrases it better than I did. And he goes on, an education degree is on par with a sociology, gender studies, or queer musicology. Yeah, you really can get a degree in this, and a colossal waste of time and money. And hey, at only around $60,000 a year for tuition, books, room, and board. Well, it may help you get paid more later on. I don't know how it works, what people do with a graduate degree in education. Well, you teach. Or no, you probably get to be an administrator is what you do. And they get paid pretty well, especially in certain Democrat strongholds. He goes on. A Master of Ed starting salary is about around $35,000 and tops out at around $75,000 after years on the job. But that's probably the average, not the Harvard Graduate School of Education. And then it continues. But hey, have your little separate ceremony. Those graduating with a Harvard STEM degree at the master level will likely start this summer at high 5 or low 6-figure salaries. All right, another comment. These fine Harvard grads are real trailblazers. Imagining what they'll be doing for, Whitey in 20 years when they assume positions as IRS administrators, medical insurance VPs, appellate court judges, and district attorneys. The possibilities for segregation are endless. After all, they are Harvard grads. Someone writes, should be a good screening tool for prospective hires. Mad Hatter writes, I don't even want to hear the blacks complain about how there used to be segregation in our nation. Another writes, to honor my identity and my struggle at Harvard. Again, that was a quote from in there. Struggle? The vast majorities of the blacks who attend Harvard are only there because they have supplanted more qualified whites and Asians through social justice engineering and affirmative action run amok. I don't disagree. I've been there. I know. Of course, whites will never win a case in Massachusetts. Well, Harvard's a private school also. But I hope Harvard's disdain for having too many yellow people gets slammed. Well, maybe we'll talk about that with Lee Cheng later. Another comment. Harvard deserves this news getting out. This is what happens when you dilute your school's entrance standards and help along marginal students. Well, they're all good students. I mean, even the ones affirmative action applies to at Harvard, they're all pretty good students. Don't kid yourself. And then it continues, talk about anachronistic nature of college, Harvard. Oh, no, that was a note to myself. Yeah, there's a point. How anachronistic is college? I say this often. With the technology that's out there today, you know, you can get a better education being homeschooled. Everything's available on the computer, which was just not the case when I was there, not even close. So, I mean, I really think even a place like Harvard is, to a large extent, a finishing school. And, you know, its real mission, yeah, the books, look, you can read a book anywhere, is to allow some people to be in the deep state elite, as I talked about before, whether it's in the university, a hedge fund, a top law firm that does a lot of pro bono to benefit Muslim immigrants, whatever. Another comment. There is nothing new in the fact that blacks are very much in favor of segregation when it's blacks excluding whites. It is only when whites exclude blacks that blacks are very much in favor of integration. No hypocrisy in that, is there? I love this. Maybe a bunch of white students will claim race fluidity, like that idiot Rachel Dolezal, and try to attend. Talk about an SJW conundrum. Someone writes, so segregation is okay as long as blacks do it, and there are a lot of comments like that. Someone writes, it's okay with me if they self-segregate. That saves us the trouble of separating the civilized from the uncivilized. Well, the ones who go to Harvard are pretty civilized. Don't kid yourself. It's not like that pool party in North Fort Lauderdale that you may have seen the video of by now. And they are not special because they are black or for their struggles. Every person experiences struggle. Picking yourself up and fighting on is called life. Again, along those lines, another comment. This is excellent, and everyone should follow the example of these students. Clearly, integration and inclusivity are failures, and it's about time we as a country acknowledge this. By all means, let us have segregation. Segregated schools would be better for everyone, as black kids could go to black schools with black teachers, staff, principals, coaches, black everything. They could learn without having to worry about seeing or hearing things that would upset them. And white kids could go to school without having to worry about being attacked, robbed, assaulted, or raped. But in all seriousness, you know, having observed what I've seen with observantly Jewish kids going to schools that are all Jewish, I'm not going to 100% disagree with that. And frankly, discipline-wise, you know, I've talked to blacks who, you know, want what's best for the kids. And they say, you know, disciplining black kids is different. I remember when Adrian Peterson had his incident, which he went too far. The testicles should not have been damaged if you're disciplining your kid. But I remember talking to some of the black people who worked at the synagogue where I was going to in Maryland. They worked in the kitchen. Good people. I enjoyed talking to them often. And they said, man, I mean, I'm paraphrasing totally. Yeah, it was a switch. Of course our parents did that to us. Of course my daddy did that to me. That's why I'm here working and not in prison. And there really were comments made like that unsolicitedly. So who knows? And I just remember a substitute teacher I know in Northeast Florida who was at a school, and there was like basically potentially a riot, and the black teachers just got in the face of the kids who were trouble and made it clear that it wasn't going to happen. And, you know, their parents would find out about it if they didn't do what they said, and it calmed the situation down. I'm not sure a white person could have done it, as that woman described the situation. I wasn't there. I lost my place. Hold on. If you're still watching by now, I guess you're patient. You're a patient person. Oh, I love this comment. I had not heard this nickname before, about Rachel Dolezal. You probably know who she is. If not, Google it. They call her Talcum X. I love it. I wonder if Talcum X Dolezal will be the commencement speaker. I guess it would apply to Sean King as well. Someone writes, our national news gets more sickening every day. I need to spend more time in my garden. One can only take so much without being discouraged. Thank God we have a president who just keeps on keeping on. Someone writes, and we've talked about how this will not be the case because people are going to both commencements. This will actually civilize the white commencement. No yelling, horns, screams, and other whatnot. Be happy. That's not the case there, and I'm not sure how much yelling and horns and screams and etc. there is, but I know what happens at a lot of high school graduations where there are a lot of African Americans, so I know what he's talking about, but I just don't think that applies to Harvard. Someone writes about the comment, global leaders, by the soon-to-be graduate of the Graduate School of Education, more like global losers. Someone writes, Yale is doing worse things every day. I refuse to contribute any money to my alma mater. This year, I used my money to contribute to the Trump campaign instead. Many Ivy League grads have stopped contributing for the same reason. And someone else writes, we're getting near the end. Not quite there yet. This is a product of the Obama administration. I think it started well before that, by the way. Liberal indoctrination, political correctness, white privilege, which disgusts me, and is another product of Obama. It started with Stand Your Ground, Zimmerman, and Trayvon. No, it started long before that, but I'll let them make the case. Officer Wilson, who did his job, and Brown was also another product of the liberal Democrats who didn't care about their cities. Obama in the Gates case. Police acted stupidly. Obama words. Speeches for Michelle and her racist rants. By the way, she's such a product of affirmative action. Don't kid yourself. DOJ and liberal judges arrested good cops, but fortunately for them, they got off from all charges. Riots in the streets because liberal and Democrat leaders said they needed their spaced event. Cops being ambushed. Respect is gone, and now we are seeing the results of a disastrous 8 years of the worst presidency in history. Well, I don't disagree, but I don't think it started there. That's just my view. I think I could back that up. Another. Hey, have you guys seen any of these graduations where blacks make up their own garb decorations to compete with the honor students who are adorned with recognitional shawls, cords, etc. for their long hours of hard work? I guess they're talking about Phi Beta Kappa students there. Someone else. Everyone who is there as an affirmative action beneficiary should have an affirmative action graduation, to which someone responds, everyone who goes to that blacks only ceremony needs to have their degrees rendered useless. Because if they believe in segregation, that makes them racists. And the left always says we need to punish racism. Someone else writes, employers take note of the black Harvard graduates of 2017. They just publicly announced how they will fit into your organization. By the way, I will point out, this is only a minority of the students who, at least quoted in the article, are doing this blacks only graduation. It's not all blacks at Harvard. I have to point that out. Another, as we leave this place as emerging global leaders, didn't we have one of those for the previous 8 years? How did that work out for us? Someone else writes, it's Harvard. They all think they are special and want to be emerging global leaders. A foolish group of real-world incompetence. Boy, people have latched onto that emerging global leaders comment. And then I like this one. Oh, this is the last one. Whew! I've been out here a while. I'm thirsty. It's funny. The Dems are finally getting what they wanted. Segregation. Once upon a time, they forced it. When they realized how that made them look, they pretended to be champions of black people. I don't know what it was about how they looked, as just what would give them the most power at the time. Remember, the KKK is a Democrat thing, as is slavery, as was segregation, etc., etc. The commenter goes on, and this is the last one. Now they spent long convincing black people who evil whitey is. That was miswritten. That wasn't me. They spent a long time convincing black people how evil whitey is, that black people are now eagerly volunteering to do what the Dems once tried to force on them. Dems only win when their supporters are stupid sheep. Kudos, black community. You guys have become the sheep the Dems have always needed. I don't disagree with that. All right, sounds like I may have Lee Cheng, who has a lot to say, was in my Harvard class, and he's great on this topic, particularly as it applies to discrimination against Asian Americans. I think he's going to be on Backlash later. If you want to catch the episode that aired yesterday, another great show, in large part due to my production team. The links are up there. Otherwise, I think I've said enough for this particular so-called Sunrise so-called report. Thank you for watching.